Chicagoland going to score. Now Roczen has won the second moto.
Sexton on the bike.
He's going to go back on top of the 250 class. Chicagoland.
Joe Shimoda over the wall. Tegan comes in the
Now
outside.
Tegan's got to try to fire back. Welcome to SMX Insider. We're your insiders, Jason Thomas and myself, Jason Wygant. I did some gigs this year where JT, it called Hype Man. That was what the title that I actually had for some of the Monster Energy Supercross races this year. Well, you folks call me Hype Man all you want. If you tell me last October, we were at the LA Memorial Coliseum, that by the time we came back, we would have winner-take-all scenarios between 6 superstars of the sport in 2 classes for this World Championship, and also the results skewing massively based on how motocross or supercross the tracks were, that's not hype. It's become reality. I feel like this has worked out exactly as we dreamed it would.
Yeah, this has been it's been fantastic from start to finish. And what I like most is the diversity of the venues and the racetracks. And I think exactly what they wanted. They wanted a hybrid track. They wanted to lean a little bit more into motocross. And then we're going to lean a little bit more towards supercross as we head towards Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum this weekend. So just as they drew it up, I think the dream has become reality.
And we've got a lot to get to in this show, including a little bit of drama or maybe even controversy with Jett Lawrence waving Ken Roczen by for the moto win and the 250 class. Joe Shimoda looked like he was going to have it, but he had some bike problems, and that wiped that out. But either way, so much to discuss in a dynamic night at the Chicagoland. It was a pretty fun atmosphere there down on the track, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Having the fans so close to the action makes SuperMotocross unique. It felt a little bit like Daytona to me, where the fans are lining the speedway, and you could even hear them on the broadcast. You could hear the fans screaming because they're so close to the action, especially on that fast straightaway with the wall jump in it. So different than Supercross. It's a different environment. It's more interactive. The fans are around the podium. They're around all the things that are going on. And I think that's one of the greatest aspects of this brand new, race environment.
And now we head to the site of the first ever Supercross race in 1972 and the home of the Olympics. Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum's up next. Okay, showdown time. Big interview. We're bringing Lee Diffie back onto the show here. He'll be giving the call from the booth this weekend in Los Angeles. We'll all be there. Look, Lee, we've been talking about this forever. It almost feels like Christmas, or like I'm going to finally get to meet Santa Claus and see him come down the chimney. It's almost like we've talked about it so much, I can't believe it's actually going to be real, but we're just about there.
Weege, I think one of the great things in life is turning concept into reality. And then when it really is real, you've executed. There's such a satisfactory feeling. And while we're not there yet, there's one to go, 30 down, one to go. But just, when Feld Entertainment, Feld Motorsports and MX Sports collaborated and came up with this concept and said, we're going to do this and we're going to make it count. Instead of being segregated, it's collaborative, and we're going to come together for the good, and we're going to see it across 31 rounds. People, I think, took a while to get their head around it. And even in season, people still didn't have their heads wrapped around it. And now here we are. Playoff 1 completed. Playoff 2 completed. We're now at the championship round. And I think there's just a really good feeling. And now that everybody does understand what it's about and they know what's on the line, it's just escalated and elevated everybody's feelings, heightened everybody's emotions. And it's kind of like this force for good,
You're rejoining us at such an interesting time, because last week in Chicago, this storyline of Jett Lawrence and Ken Roczen, and of course Chase Sexton is the points leader, and he's not even getting the headlines right now. But I'm curious to see your perspective, what you thought as you watched Jett wave Ken Roczen by, and then all of the comments afterwards and all the interpretation. And we truly don't really know what was going through Jett's mind at the time. We heard what he said. Everybody seems to have their own opinion, but what was your perspective? And also, what were the comments of other people you've talked to about what went on in Chicago?
That emoji with the head exploding, your mind exploding, that comes to mind, pardon the pun. It's not very often in any competition you see a leader wave an opponent by. So I'll park it there for that. And then it just gives us so much fodder to talk about and to wonder. And hey, if it all turns out Jett Lawrence's way, well, then he has the last laugh. But if it doesn't work out his way, I'm not sure. I'm kind of like you and everybody else. It's still a little bemused, confused. It's certainly given everybody a lot to talk about. I heard Roczen's comments over the last 48 hours as well, which are pretty interesting. And for us on the broadcast side of things and on the entertainment side of things, it's given us a wonderful layup for this weekend. So much to talk about and to wonder and to see how this is going to play out in now a third totally different track configuration. So I don't think you ever want to give it, as a competitor, you never want to give any of your opponents a leg up. But how is that going to work out in this sport that people don't give enough credit to about the psychological warfare that happens in supermotocross competition? So that's going to be yet another reason, a compelling reason to watch this weekend to see how it's all going to play out.
Yeah, honestly, it couldn't have set up better. So it was last October. A couple of us were at the Coliseum to announce what this would be. And as much as we were trying to hype it, that's why we were there. I don't think even at the time we said, and when we get back here, we will have Ken Roczen, Chase Sexton, Jett Lawrence, 3 superstars. Whoever wins the race, with a little help on Roczen's side, can win the title amongst those 3. We have the same situation in the 250 class. That's what we were hoping. I think it's actually been better than we even imagined to have this setup. But it reminds me of something. I also cover the Monster Energy Amateur National at Loretta Lynn's every year, and that's where we scout the amateur riders. And people always criticize it and say, why are they using one race? Shouldn't it be several years or multiple races? And I say, yeah, but it's testing them under pressure. Lee, when you're announcing the 100-meter dash in the Olympics, does anyone say, hey, it's not fair, there should be 10 races? No, the point is one. The point is this weekend, which one of these 3 riders in both classes can perform under pressure? You've seen how sports are determined like this. Just explain what that's like to know there is no tomorrow. It's one day for everything.
Well, it takes me back to, it's appropriate that you live in Charlotte, North Carolina, because I used to as well. And when our kids were little and we started looking for schools, we went to a charter school presentation for our eldest son. And after about 90 minutes of sitting in the school gymnasium, listening to the school principal, we got right to the end and she said, oh, by the way, I've been remiss not to mention any sports. We don't offer a sports program at this school because we don't believe in competition. And I looked at my wife and my wife looked at me and we said, let's get up. We're out of here. So the whole world is competition. And when you have it at this level, to me, that's what makes it just so fascinating, because now the supermotocross athletes are at a point in their career where it is delivery time. Previous iterations of either Monster Energy Supercross or the Pro Motocross Championship is you ride it out to the end and you work off your point system. Now we're in a situation where it's like NFL playoffs or Super Bowl situation, where if you throw that pick 6, it's over. If you throw and you make that touchdown winning pass, you're going to be Super Bowl champions. Or in golf, the PGA, the FedEx Cup playoffs, that's a $400,000 putt. Can he handle or she handle the pressure in the LPGA? Whatever it is, to me, in the previous iterations, this is just played out in this lovely linear way. Now the walls are closing in and it's coming to this natural, tit at the top of the triangle. And to me, it's going to be for all of us to enjoy, to see who can sustain that pressure the best. Who has that psychological bandwidth to handle that pressure, that extreme pressure. And for us, we're going to enjoy the moto riding and racing, one. But to me, it's that other layer and that other level of that and even take it away from the guys who are going for the SMX World Championship, right? Let's just go down the order. Passing for a lower number could be a $20,000 pass. And for some of the guys at the back, $10,000 or $20,000 is a big deal, a really big deal. And so I think we're going to be watching everywhere, right at the front and also all the way back, because it gives those guys who are not headline makers, but they are good enough to make this field. It's going to be a really big deal this weekend in LA.
That's it. Yeah, we had the concept. This is the execution. I honestly feel like it's come together maybe even better than we imagined. It'll be good to reunite this weekend, see you in the booth, and really get ready for that Olympic Super Bowl style moment, Lee. It's going to be great.
Can't wait. It's going to be awesome.
Let's run through the hot topics now coming out of Chicago and into LA with our 30-second board. In the big picture, we'll drill down to the details, but the big picture, JT, the Lawrence brothers didn't get what they wanted in Charlotte, neither on the podium. They both win in Chicago, so a huge bounce back.
Yeah, it wasn't, and they needed to do this, right? Because they've been so great throughout all of 2023, and they really had kind of a letdown race, which I think you could understand, to kind of find that emotion again, find that intensity after, exiting Ironman with those championships had to be difficult. And I think it was a little bit of a wake-up call. I think they both left there a little bit angry, a little bit embarrassed about their performance in Charlotte, and you could see that bounce-back type performance there in Chicago.
Yes, but let's get into the details now. Probably the hottest story coming out of this is the odd Jett Lawrence wave by to let Ken Roczen win the second moto. It didn't affect the overall as far as Jett was concerned. He was still going to win the overall anyway, but this is still a rider who we just watched win every single moto. Title-wise, he didn't have to, but he wanted a perfect season in Pro Motocross. So this was super puzzling. It wasn't a bike problem. He said he was trying to do some math and maybe shove Roczen between Sexton and the overall to help him in points. This was really bizarre, and I know you and I actually have different opinions on this.
Yeah, this is going to be the most talked about subject of the week, no doubt, as we lead into the finale here. And I don't know that we're ever going to get, the truth on exactly what happened, right? Will Jett ever tell us the, have clarity on his thought process? My opinion is that I think Kenny was really pushing the pace, and the track was really difficult. It was a little bit darker than a typical Supercross environment. It had the dirt was really dark as well, which exacerbated that. And you look at the pace when they were able to pull away from Chase Sexton, they were on the edge. And I don't think Jett really felt comfortable there. And I believe that once he figured out that he could get the overall win either way, I think he just let Kenny go. And obviously there was a wave by, but I think it was more of, hey, I don't need to win this particular moto to still get the overall. It won't change anything in the points. I don't need to push the edge here, because if I go over the edge and I have a crash, a big crash because of this, that could be catastrophic. So I think he just relented, and Kenny was the better of those two on that particular moto. I believe Ken Roczen didn't get the respect and the credit that he deserved for how fast he was going. And now Kenny feels slighted by it. I think he's very disappointed in how Jett handled it, not only on the podium, but also in the press conference. And now, he's going to have to deal with an angry Ken Roczen, who's probably more motivated than ever to go into Los Angeles. So it's a very interesting wrinkle to a lot of racing that was already very interesting.
Yeah, when Jett adds on the podium that it was a gift for the new dad, Ken, I think that Ken says, I don't need your gifts. I think I could have beat you straight up. Now you make it sound like I could have never beaten you unless you handed it to me. So I don't think Kenny's happy about that, because he was riding well. So that just adds to the drama going into LA. We also had a story breaking in Chicago. Finally, Team USA for the Motocross of Nations announced. That's not without its controversies as well. If people haven't been paying attention this year, they're probably like, where did they come up with Plessinger, Hampshire, and Christian Craig, who's not even racing right now due to injury? How did they come up with this? Well, behind the scenes, I can assure you they tried to have the frontline racers who are racing on the team first. That didn't work out, and we might never find out the truth about that, too, JT.
Yeah, this was someone should write a story on this behind the scenes and get quotes, because we're a little bit more clued in than most, and you just heard all the different directions and different angles and possibilities that Team USA was going to look like before we got this final rendition. It's a really challenging dynamic. We have racing later here in the USA than we typically do with this SuperMotocross World Championship. That was a wrinkle. Rider contracts ending in October, some not, was another wrinkle. In the end, I think the message that both Mike Pelletier and Roger DeCoster shared is a great one. These three guys wanted to be there. They want to put the effort in. It's not a hassle. It's not something they were talked into. They stuck their hands up and truly want to be there. So win, lose, or draw, if we have riders that are willing to put their best effort in and show up and give it all for Team USA, I'm going to be there and cheer them on. It's just been a crazy, crazy few months of how we actually landed on these final three.
Let's move to the next topic, which is that track in Chicago. Everyone knew it would be more motocross than the Charlotte race we had the previous week. It didn't have a gnarly, steep rhythm lane that the riders had to worry about. It was very fast, and then it did get rough. So this was a much more moto-style track, and I think it lived up to what they expected with the more motocross layout.
Yeah, it was much faster, and think about how long it was. Lap times were in the 150s. That is incredibly long for a venue of this sort, and I just love how it's forcing riders and teams to adapt. If you thought you had everything figured out in Charlotte, you got a rude wake-up call yet again when you entered Chicagoland Speedway there, because it was totally different. The dirt was different, the speeds were different, the obstacles were different, and it's forcing these guys to be on their toes. They're having to communicate. And if you went over to the garages, if you happened to go to the race this weekend and walked over to the garages, which is a great part of FanFest, you can literally watch what's happening with these teams and riders. It was a constant change throughout the weekend. There were suspension off, there were bike changes, because all these riders were trying to find that elusive comfort level and, allow them to be their best selves. You and I both spoke to a ton of riders over the weekend, and they were just scratching their heads. They couldn't make heads or tails of where to go with the motorcycles. And as we led off at the top of the show, it's not going to get any better for them as we go into LA. We're going to go back to a completely different environment inside that Coliseum.
Well, yeah, I think the real question for LA is going to be how much motocross will be built into that track. Because I think back to Charlotte style, everyone's saying we need Supercross suspension. The real question will be, is that going to be perfect on 90% of the track or 60% of the track or 70%? We won't know until they ride on Friday, so definitely check that out. Okay, here's your updated standings in the 250 class. Have not talked about this enough. Hunter Lawrence, thanks to the double points, bounces all the way back to have a slim lead over Joe Shimoda and Hayden Deegan, but too slim. It's essentially going to be winner take all, which we'll talk about later. But right now, Hunter is back on top with that bounce back that he needed.
Yeah, I love the way this is playing out. And I don't know, how much thought was put into this. Like, did they have a guy like Quentin Fowler walking through the math? But man, it is setting up so nicely to have this one race, one night shootout. Of course, it'll be two motos, but it's going to be this 250 class as well, a winner take all type dynamic where it's all on the line, right? $500,000 just being paid out from the organization. And that's not even counting all the sponsor bonuses. So there is so much to play for. Ricky Carmichael, if he was on this show, he would tell me it's not about the money, it's about the pride. I don't know. I think it's about both. I understand his point, but for a lot of these 250 riders, they're not multimillionaires yet, right? They are still on their journey towards hopefully where they end up, and they're an elite 450 rider and financial security. They're still forging that path. So winning something like this, not only for their career, but their financial future, this is a huge, huge moment.
We have seen races with less money on the line that count for less. They don't even count for titles in the offseason, where riders did crazy things to make $100,000 or $250,000. This is $500 if you win and $250 for second. So yeah, they're going to go for it this weekend. Right before we went to Chicagoland, the night before, we were in Ohio for the annual AMA Hall of Fame ceremony in Columbus. I got to attend. I couldn't have picked a better class, I think, for this sport to go in. It was so fun to be there. So congratulations to everybody. First, Rita Coombs, who's the co-founder of MX Sports, which now is the Pro Motocross promoter, and also Loretta Lynn's and GNCC. Rita is one of my all-time favorite people. I have tons of stories that I cannot discuss on the air of going to races in the GNCC tour in the younger days. Rita is hilarious and awesome. Her speech was great. She's 82 years old, and her speech was spectacular. Great job, Rita. The incomparable Travis Pastrana in as an ambassador because of all the great things he's done for motorcycling. Then my old broadcast colleague, Grant Langston. Ryan Dungey, he needs no introduction. He goes in. And the multi-time GNCC champ, Barry Hawk, who's no slouch on a motocross track either. This is a dynamic class for this sport. I mean, the AMA Hall of Fame is for all motorcycling, engineers, Harley people, road racing people, dominated on the off-road side this year, JT.
Yeah, it's still a really broad range, though. You think about Pastrana with the ambassador side, and I would make an argument if you just wanted to talk about even racing. He was phenomenal, right? He was still a national champion. Now, does he have the credentials of Grant Langston in his motocross racing? No. But I just love Rita Coombs, who has such a storied history, along with, the late Dave Coombs. They founded so many aspects of the sport and pushed it along, all the way to Barry Hawk, a GNCC guy that, the hardcore Supercross fan may not know much about, but he was phenomenal in his own right. So I just love to see the breadth and the wide-ranging perspectives that this class brought.
I want to talk about this kid, Canyon Richards from New Jersey. He's not only fast here, I think coulda, shoulda won a title in this division at Loretta Lynn's, but he had engine problems in one of the motos. But he's also good in the woods. He's battling for the Grand National Cross Country Championship, and they have a race tomorrow morning in West Virginia. So he and his dad, they said they've got to have the van packed, and they've got to be on the road tonight at 9 p.m., which is about 25 minutes from now, and they have to go 8 hours straight one stop for fuel to get to the starting line for a 2-hour race tomorrow at 7:30 in the morning in West Virginia, because he's fighting for that championship. And look at the versatility. He's running second right now.
Look how big he is on that motorcycle, too. Pretty impressive how he's able to ride it.
Oh, and there it is. Oh, and we mentioned that casing on the big jump, and it's come undone for Richards.
Okay, so when we last left on the Supermotocross side, Canyon Richards, we thought he was done. But lo and behold, he did still get to the GNCC and finish third in his class and stay in contention for the overall youth championship in GNCC. This is wild. JT, you've seen this. You've lived this. I think people on the outside don't realize the kids and their parents, how hard they're willing to work to try to succeed on two wheels.
Yeah, a racer is a racer is a racer. And we have a very unique sport. I think if it was just your average, Little League softball family, they'd be like, wait, you did what? And then you were where and how? Like, it's just a completely different thought process for what, motocross and supercross are. And that's okay. I think it breeds a lot of character. I really think it toughens up, as long as he's, safe, it toughens up a kid like Canyon Richards and outside of motocross and supercross. And I think that's the most important part, is the character and the ability to overcome adversity and those types of things. Those are life lessons that these kids are learning, and they're learning them every weekend at motocross tracks around America. So outside of this, of course, we were all very thankful that he was okay, but to see him bounce back and say, yeah, let's go racing the next day, 500 miles away, it's just an incredible story of perseverance by Canyon.
Actually, you nailed it. I talked to his dad on Friday, and he said, yeah, we're taking a huge risk doing both, and it might not work out, but it is character building to give it your all under any circumstance. So you nailed it. That's the main reason the dad wanted to do it. Try everything you've got. If it doesn't work, you still learn from it. Now, on the other end from the Super Mini field is Ken Roczen, one of the veterans of the game, now a dad for the second time. He had the baby, well, Courtney, his wife, did on Wednesday. I feel like when we saw Kenny Friday morning at the press conference, he looked tired to me. Did you sense that on Friday?
Yeah, I mean, it's fair enough to assume that, right? I would imagine he was doing a lot of daddy duties, holding the family together there as Courtney was recovering. But I also thought it was really important for him that he mentioned he's able to now focus on one thing, right? He had so many things going on. And I asked him that question at the press conference. He's like, no, you just have to focus. Like, this is too big of a deal, too big of a moment. I have to just lock in. And Ricky Carmichael mentioned that in the broadcast as well, because Ricky, remember, he had his two twins the night before the Orlando Supercross of 2007. And then he came in and gave us one of the best performances against James Stewart that I think we've ever seen, one of the most historic nights of Supercross ever. So there's something about that. I'm sure the pride that Kenny was boasting, right? His heart was probably exploding with emotion and adrenaline on the backside of that. And I think we saw that on the racetrack. So whatever he's doing, maybe they need to keep adding to the family, because Kenny's riding better than ever.
Let's show you the SMX points going into this finale. It's between all three of them. Remember, it is triple points. So at a normal race, there's a 3-point difference between a win and a second. There will be a 9-point difference. We'll get into that in detail. But bottom line is, Roczen's in it just as much as Sexton and Jett are going into LA.
Yeah, it's super close. And I think Kenny is on a mission for respect. I think, we forget about how long Kenny has been the guy, right? He was expected to go on this huge championship winning streak, and we've all looked at him as one of the most talented riders worldwide. And he's been out of the spotlight a little bit this summer, and I don't think he liked that very much. He came in and gave us a great performance at High Point, but I think this whole Supermotocross World Championship playoff for him has been about reestablishing himself and showing everyone, including us, that he can still win at this level, and he can beat whoever it is. Jett Lawrence, Chase Sexton. I don't think he cares what the name on the back of the jersey is. He's out to prove that he can still be that guy.
Okay, here's the track he'll have to do it on. This LA track everyone assumes will be more supercrossy compared to Chicago. What were your thoughts when you saw this track map?
I just thought it was a reversion back to Supercross. And the more I've looked at it, it really feels like what the Monster Cup used to be like. There will be some fast sections, but it will feel like a Supercross race to a lot of the riders. It won't have the Supercross whoops that Monster Cup didn't have either, right? And that's how we attracted some of the MXGP guys is bring them in, because they don't have to deal with that whoop element that is so difficult to learn. So to me, we're gonna have the biggest stage, all the stars, the biggest broadcast team, all these things. But the track, when the riders, when they lock in, I think it's going to feel very much like the Monster Cup was. And it'll be interesting to see if a lot of those guys go back to a setting that maybe they had from a Monster Cup, right? Can those technicians go back to their logs and say, what worked at the Monster Cup? What gave these guys the most traction and the most comfort at a track like that? So maybe that's something they could use as a little bit of perspective.
I think back to Monster Cup, that's kind of where Jett Lawrence and the whole donut thing was born. He won the amateur all-star race there a long, long time ago, put himself on the map, and then offered the AMA official who gave him the championship plate some donuts. So yes, they all do have experience, even though that race was a couple years in the rearview mirror. But the stakes are a lot higher now, and as we said, in both classes, it is essentially winners take all in both divisions. So I think we're going to need some data on this. Okay, so if we're going to go through data, we're going to bring our staff statistician, the king of the calculator, Clinton Fowler, on for Fowler's Facts. We keep saying winner take all, so just define that for us, because remember, this race is triple points.
Yeah, we definitely have some great winner take all scenarios here this weekend. In the 450s, Chase Sexton, Jett Lawrence separated by a mere 2 points. The difference between first and second place is 9 points. So whoever wins in LA takes that championship, Weege.
Yeah, okay, so we know that's the case between Sexton and Lawrence, but just define Roczen's situation.
Yeah, Ken Roczen is actually the variable here that makes it even better. He really comes in as the third winner take all, Weege. So if he wins and Jett Lawrence is second and Chase Sexton is third, he takes the title. So he's in the scenario for winner take all, but he needs it to be Jett in second and Chase in third. And so JT, the question now becomes, can he have the speed when he goes into that LA Coliseum? Can he hang with those guys?
I think he can. And most importantly, I think he believes he can. And I think he's looking at it going, this is my opportunity. This is my opportunity to show both, the recently departed Team Honda that he was unable to win that championship on, and all the doubters, all the people that said, hey, I don't know if this is ever going to really work for Kenny. This is a real motivator. And then you add on top of that Jett's comments about gifting him a win last weekend. All of that is just going to propel Kenny further and further forward. So as we know, a motivated Kenny is a very dangerous Kenny, and he's proven that through 2 weekends so far.
JT, what about this alliance here now that Sexton and Roczen have hooked back up as riding partners during the week? How do you think that plays in?
Well, I think they have their own unique reasons to want to beat Jett, but I do think the point is well made that both of them are wanting to beat Jett, right? I don't think they're looking at each other going, man, I got to beat you this weekend. You're my big rival. I don't believe that to be the case. I think it's almost a team effort. You can't, obviously it's not a team sport, but they're both looking at Jett like, I'm going to beat this guy, right? And they have their own, as I mentioned, their own unique reasons for that. But it does feel like it's a Chase and Kenny versus Jett type dynamic. And we'll see how that looks on a racetrack. But what an interesting storyline as we head into LA.
Okay, then we go to the 250 class. That's even more cut and dry, I think. Winner take all, right?
It sure is, Weege. You've got three guys, Hunter Lawrence, Joe Shimoda, and Hayden Deegan, all separated by 7 points. And again, the difference between first and second is 9 points. So any of those three win, they take the title, and they take $500,000 with it. Incredible to consider. These guys have just been the top of the class. Hunter, a little bit inconsistent here in the playoffs. Joe Shimoda, though, since Ironman has gone first, second overall, arguably should have been first overall last weekend in Chicago. And then Deegan during the playoffs, incredibly consistent with 2 third-place finishes. So I think we've just got 3 supremely talented racers all going for that title, and it's whoever wins, wins.
Yes, and remember, with all this, it's triple points. So these 3 are the likely candidates, but there are other riders mathematically still in this. So get the calculator ready there, Clinton. It's going to be wild on Saturday.
Looking forward to LA. See you guys there.
Okay, this is it. I'm going to circle back to what I said at the beginning of this show. We held a press conference at this building, the Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum, last October, and we hyped this up as much as we could. But it has become reality now. We have winners take all in both classes, and if you had told someone last October that it would be Joe Shimoda, Hayden Deegan, who we didn't even know would be racing, and Hunter Lawrence battling it out for $500,000, and Jett Lawrence, Ken Roczen, who people probably didn't even know if Roczen would be racing either, or how good Jett would be in a 450, and then throw Chase Sexton in the mix. Those 6 athletes with this kind of money on the line in a track that no one really knows what it's going to be like for sure, no amount of hype could have measured up to this, JT. If you're a fan, you got to go.
Yeah, this is amazing to be in this, LA Coliseum with so much history of the sport and the peristyle. And you think about what that scene is going to look like this coming Saturday night. Then you think about the points. We have a winner-take-all scenario in both classes. Whoever was writing the script for this a year ago, I'd like to give them a pat on the back because this is phenomenal. And of course, we know racing is racing. You can't predict anything or steer things a certain way, but this has turned out exactly how we would want it to. All these guys in both classes, they're going to put it all on the line to try to be the inaugural SuperMotocross World Champion this weekend. So, Weege, I know you're a big wrestling fan, and I know there's not fake. We know that, right? But the script writers behind the scenes in wrestling, they may want to take a note or two from SuperMotocross because this is as good as you could ever draw it up.
Yeah, they call it bookers there. Whoever booked this got it right. And I'm going to throw one other thing in here. We will definitely have the SMX playoffs next year, but we don't know what venues they're going to or going back to. So I don't know if we're going back to the LA Coliseum. This could be your one and maybe last chance to see dirt bike racing in this building. So if you're anywhere nearby, or if you want to get a plane ticket, come on out and join us in person. If you can't, here's how you can watch. Of course, Peacock and the SuperMotocross Video Pass have everything live. Race Day Live starts at 4:30 Eastern. Our pre-race show at 9:30 Eastern. We'll go racing at 10 Eastern on Saturday. The racing portion at 10 will also be shown on USA Network, and there'll be an encore on NBC at 4 o'clock on Sunday to get all the eyeballs on this incredible winners-take-all event 50 years after the first Supercross race ever took place in this building. It's not hype, it's reality. We'll see you there, everybody.